Hi there, folks. This is WP Tonic, episode 99. We've got a live panel here of WordPress experts. We're going to be talking about WordPress news of the week. And then we're going on to our main topic, which is what plugins that our panel put on almost every WordPress website that they're involved in. It should be a lively chat. I'm going to ask the panel to introduce themselves. Let's start with Jackie. Like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Jackie D'Elia, and I run Jackie D'Elia Designs, and I build websites for clients to help promote their brand and drive their customer engagement.
And thanks, Jackie. Sally, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Sally Getch. My business is WP Fangirl. I build WordPress websites for small businesses and nonprofits, and I'm also the organizer of the East Bay WordPress meetup in Oakland, California.
And my beloved co-host, like to introduce yourself, John?
Sure thing. My name is John Locke. I run a small WordPress consultancy called Lockdown Design here in Sacramento. And what about you, Jonathan?
I'm the maintenance guy. I clear the rubbish up. I'm the WordPress rubbish disposal company. We clean up the messes. Go to WP Tonic and find more. We're very helpful. So, folks, let's start off with some of the great news stories that my panel have found. And let's start off with Jackie and the story that you found on Tavern about themes. Can you explain the story and why you found it interesting, Jackie?
The story was about a plugin that helps you compare your parent theme updates for your child theme and helps you decide if you need to add any functionality or changes to your theme. And for most people, it's pretty scary when there's an update and you don't want to go in and mess with your child theme. So this makes it a little bit easier. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's great. Got any comments, Sally, about it?
I remember seeing that in passing and thinking, well, that sounds like a nice, a nice idea because, there was already a theme check plugin. This is a little bit different because the original theme check plugin is mainly meant for people who are creating themes that they mean to put in the repository. But this is nice because, yes, sometimes, it's possible, even if you have updated your parent theme, that you've done something in your child theme that needs to be addressed and that you wouldn't otherwise be aware of. So I think that's useful. It is definitely something more aimed at developers than at end users who, I think, it's kind of like if you get those WooCommerce updates and it says you have these templates out of date, and your average store owner is going to say, now what?
Yes. What do you think, John?
Well, definitely. This plugin is really cool because that is a problem. And I think in the WP Tavern article it references that there is a thread of somebody who is using Avada, big shock there, and they every time they would update it, things would break, and that is the reality of using any CMS. Any CMS, whether it's WordPress, Joomla, Drupal, when there's updates to the theme, you're going to have to test it on a staging site. And this plugin is really useful because safely, if you're using like a premium theme, say something you bought on ThemeForest or one of the independent theme shops, and you're using a child theme, you want to be able to track the differences between your child theme and your parent theme so that nothing breaks. Now, ideally, you're testing that on a staging server. But this is a useful way to maybe track changes and not be hunting and searching for all the things that potentially might be different.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's actually it's quite surprising because I think this is an area that should have been looked at a lot earlier, and some internal tools should be there, because it's a security problem as well, and it kind of puts everything in the air. But like what you say, you should have a staging site, and it is important to keep everything updated, isn't it? But on the other hand, if you don't have a staging site, or you don't really know how you should set things up before you install something like upgrade like this, you can get into a bit of a mess, can't you? Would you agree with that, Jackie?
Yes, I would. And I mean, I've even had challenges just with keeping up with, like, I'm using Utility Pro for my starter theme, right? And so that has continual updates to it. And, you have to go through the updates and see if it's going to conflict with any changes I've already made to the theme. And it's a task to do. I mean, it's not an easy task to manage that and to keep them in sync. It's especially if you're also making changes to the theme yourself. And maybe you've an area that's been changed, you've reworked it yourself. Now you've got to go back and say, okay, did I miss something that is important? Is there a security issue? Is there, just a functionality problem that I wasn't aware of? And now I got to go back and find out exactly where those lines of code are. And other themes too, especially in the Genesis, because that's where I work. But I mean, I've noticed that, you might get a theme and it's at version 101 when you get it. Now it's at 106. And most of the, like you were saying, users that are just using the theme and purchased it and installed it are not going to be equipped to go through and say, okay, well, what changes have been made in this theme between version 1.01 and 1.06? And where are all these changes made? What files do I need to edit? Because you certainly just don't want to copy the whole thing over if you've made edits yourself, especially with the style sheet and the functions PHP file. Those would be the two primary places that the average user would end up making changes to. So you're right, Jonathan. It is a challenge, and it seems like managing updates to themes is much more challenging than it is for plugins.
Maybe because we don't make as many changes to plugins.
Exactly. You install it, but they update it, and you're not customizing that plugin per se, so you don't have to worry about it. You can just accept the update and carry on.
Yeah, but the article itself, I didn't read it in enormous detail, but I did read it, and it made I thought was an interesting point. The responsibility of the theme developer, because they should realise that almost everybody's going to make make a child theme. If it doesn't come with a child theme, which it should do, then it should be already set up in that way, as far as I'm concerned. But that's my opinion. But if you have to make a child, if it doesn't, you should make a child theme.
Absolutely.
And then do the changes. But as a theme developer, especially a commercial or anybody, that wants to be taken seriously in that area, they should know that people are going to put changes in the child theme, because that's the whole purpose, isn't it? Where it comes with Genesis is that you have people make a child of the child, don't you? Mm-hmm. So you got the parent, which is Genesis. Then you got the actual commercial child theme, and then they make a child of the child.
Well, not strictly speaking, because there's not really such a thing as a grandchild theme. Is what people mostly do is edit the child theme and maybe rename it or not.
It seems like, though, a lot of them, at least with the style sheet, you can use like there's a simple custom CSS.
I use that a lot, and so if you're just editing CSS, you can use something like that. And and then if you've only changed that, then you can you could update a theme like something like Utility Pro and not worry that anything was overwritten because you've got it all in that plugin.
Yeah, and that typically loads last, so it's gonna trump any styles that were changed earlier on, which is nice, and that helps. And then maybe you could even go with maybe not modifying your functions PHP file, but, you know, maybe calling in requiring another PHP file that has your custom things, and try to keep them separate so that you would still have to do some work, because when the new function PHP file comes with a theme update, you're going to have to go back in and put your require in there to pull in that other file. But at least they're separated, so you get, you know, you don't have to go in and try to go through that line by line to see, okay, well, where were the changes made?
Yeah, I think that's great, Jackie. But I think the article was saying also the theme developer's got some responsibility to keep this in mind. So to try and avoid producing an update that if anybody's done any kind of changes in a child theme, they're going to end up
documentation
with a total
would be
mess.
helpful, line number, whatever, there you go, we've made this change, why we made the change, is it required, is it something, or is it just, it's a style change, you can use it if you want or not, and that would be helpful. So a little more detail on exactly what was changed in a theme. Yes.
And I always do what I think it was either you or Sally said, or John, sorry. I think it was actually John, I'm really cagey about updating themes on a live site for a client. It's one of the most diciest. I'd never do it. I always do it on a staging site. It can be one of the most it can really cause you some headaches and long nights.
You should not work on your live site. Anything you shouldn't.
No, but that's really a bad idea, folks. So you want to
especially
avoid
a client
that,
site. I mean, if you're going to want to mess up your own site, well, go for it. But if you're working on a client site and they're paying you to take care of it, or they're paying you to build it out, don't work on the live site, even if it's something minor, because you get tempted. You go, oh, I could just no, don't do that. Don't do that.
I can't resist temptation.
And one of the rules is always make sure you have access to the server files that you can get to it before you even start. SSH, SFTP, whatever it is you're using, make sure you have access to it. Go and make a copy of the files you're editing, and it's for safekeeping in case you need to put something back. I mean, I can't tell you how many times you can go in and even edit the HE access file and just mess everything up and not even realize it until, a little while later, and you're looking, and you're like, oh, okay. And if you hadn't made a copy of the original one of that, it's dicey. You're not sure what to do.
Every day I wonder. All right, so shall we go on to the next story? Let's go on to the next story, Jackie provided, which is finding WordPress in the post-print new era. So, can you start us off on this one?
An interesting article. They were talking about, just that most of the print journalism is going digital, and a lot of them, they're using publishing platforms, but a lot of the components in them are from WordPress, and it was interesting. They used an Arc publishing, I think is what framework that they were using, but a lot of the components in it are WordPress, and it was just interesting that that is a big part of the user base for WordPress. There's a lot of digital publishing companies, the smaller ones especially, that are moving their print online, and that's, I guess, the direction that it's going to go.
Yeah, it was really interesting article. What do you think, Sally?
I glanced at that briefly, but I know there have been, all kinds of approaches with WordPress to, both using WordPress for creating print documents, or creating print documents from WordPress, and of course other kinds of things, various newspapers and magazines, and I'm not very surprised that they would. That people would use WordPress for that, as it seems like a fairly good place to start. I've heard of some news organizations having sort of custom CMSs or other things, and basically most of what I've heard about them is that WordPress would be preferable.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Sally, because when I was reading the article, I was thinking back on the last week. I was listening to the Matt report, and Matt, the owner of Socom Themes, and he was saying that his theme shop and his code shop, that they're really now specialised on higher education and regional and local newspapers, and some of their biggest clients are kind of smallish regional newspapers that are looking for an easy used platform, but they're looking for a quality code shop that can give them the support and customization that they're also looking for. So, I think what most people don't realise is that some of the biggest, online news websites are run on WordPress, and then you get other institutions and other organisations say that they just don't think WordPress is up to it. So it's a quite interesting situation. It's all about perspective.
It is,
Sally?
and I think it's probably also about what your specific needs are, because I think in some cases it's true that your sort of vanilla WordPress installation wouldn't be up to it, that you would have to make the kinds of have your server set up specially, do some of the things they do with the VIP service, so that WordPress out of the box wouldn't be sufficient. It doesn't mean WordPress couldn't do it.
What do you think, John?
Several years ago, Joe Boydston, he gave like a talk at Sacramento WordPress meetup about using WordPress as a CMS for smaller like news publications, and he was like a pioneer in or who he was working for was kind of pioneering that. At the same time, you're seeing like more like larger scale like newspapers move to that now. The really, it seems like the technical challenge is the database. I mean, a long time ago, like when I was growing up, like you go to the library or you'd go to like a newspaper and they'd have all their archives like on microfilm, or they'd have it, just physical copies. But now when you're talking something like a Boston Globe, like a New York Times, a Washington Post, you're talking about, billions of stories that need to be archived in their database. And that requires, like a lot of technical planning. Something like that, WordPress VIP hosting is what you're going to need. But say for like a regional newspaper, say something like in this area, like Elk Grove Citizen, Carmichael Times, something like that, it's much smaller. And WordPress would be a good solution. As always, though, the big thing with online newspapers is advertising, how to work in the advertising, because that's always going to be the main revenue source. Circulation and advertising. So, answering those questions is the biggest thing for, switching to any CMS, whether it's WordPress or something else.
Yeah. It's quite interesting because in my own area, the Reno Gazette, they've got some priority system. I don't exactly know what they're using. In Carson City, there's a news website. I know he's a well-known reporter and he runs this news website. But that's based on Drupal because he's a bit of a Drupal fan. And then there's a couple other smaller ones that are on WordPress. So it's a very diverse kind of setup. But I definitely get the impression that WordPress is getting traction a lot in the online news, printed paper kind of company area. That's my impression. So we had a last article from one of our other panelists, David, and I put it on. I didn't get time to read it because it's one very large article about the future of WordPress. I propose we leave that for David. If he joins us, he can talk about that because I didn't get the opportunity to read it to the extent, but it looked like a fantastic article, very in-depth. I am going to give it a good read over the weekend, but I've got a few projects to do this weekend, but I'm going to give it a good read and probably either discuss it either today or next week, maybe. So I think what we're going to do, folks, is we're going to go for our first break. And then when we're going to come back, we're going to be talking about the main topic, which is WordPress plugins that we tend to put on almost every site. So we will be back in a minute, folks. Well, we're coming back, folks, and got a great panel here. We've had a good discussion about some really great news topics, and we're going on to our main topic, folks. So, Jackie, give us a couple of the plugins that you just literally put on almost any website you're dealing with.
Okay, so are we talking about when you're developing a website, or were you talking about for an end user, what plugins you would want to have on their site when you're finished with it? Those are two different.
Jackie, okay. wherever you want to go, Jackie.
I'll start off with. I'll start off with what I would do, when I'm developing a website, like what's my toolkit? What do I need to do my job? And then, of course, there'll be things that I'll remove as time goes by when, you put your site live. But, desktop server is number one for me, and MigrateDB Pro with added media files, add-on plugin. Those two, I can't live without either one of those. And I have to say, MigrateDB Pro, I've been using a lot more because I've been working on projects where there's continuing updates happening on the live side, and I have to pull things in. And it's not as simple as just desktop server is great for the initial get your site set up and get it up on a staging. And then if you need to continually sync it, the MigrateDB Pro is much better. So those two are really my top two that I would put on there. And I'll leave it over to everybody else to show. Those are the two that I would start with for sure.
Well, Annie, you want to start off?
All right. So there, it's true that my, my deploy setup includes plugins I use while developing, like, the Genesis Visual Hook Guide that I normally take out afterwards because, my client doesn't need them, and why let them, why have to carry the overhead. And, I have a list of plugins that are Genesis oriented, since that's what I build, and a list of plugins that are, would go on other sites also. One of the, literally top of the list is Anti-Spam by Webvitali, which I generally use instead of Akismet, unless there's a reason I'm forced to use Akismet, because it just keeps the spam from ever getting into your database, and it's free. And most of my client sites are not personal blogs, they're business sites, and so they need to pay if they want an Akismet license, and some of them are happy enough to do that. But what I find still happens is that those spam comments are sitting on there for 30 days before they get eliminated, and by the time that 30 days is up, there's been as many more spam comments, and that's just clutter in your database that you don't need.
That is a great point. What was the name of that plugin again?
The plugin is anti-spam, since there are several of these, several plugins with similar names. And let me just copy the link and put it in the chat here.
Awesome. Thank you.
Right. Got any you want to start off with, John?
Yeah, definitely. So when I'm developing a site, the two plugins that I use pretty much like all the time, Advanced Custom Fields Pro and what's the other one? WP Migrate Database Pro. And when I discovered WP Migrate Database Pro, that was like a revelation to me. If anybody does not know about this plugin, it is you need to use it because essentially, it basically say you're moving a site from local to staging to production. Well, here's the problem: is your whole database, moving it is like a pain, and changing the paths, like the URL paths, is like a pain. But this plugin just does it for you. The license, I think it's less than like $100 a year for a license.
Totally worth it.
Yeah,
Worth it.
it's
so much time.
a terrific plugin, and especially if you're using. I mean, I tend to use Backup Buddy for a lot of my migration, but there are hosts where you can't do that, and the Migrate DB Pro is particularly good in cases where, you know, you can't just pop the whole site over all in one, or where things might have been changing on the live site while you were working on the staging site, and you need to be sure that stuff is updated. And the same company, Delicious Brains, is working on basically a live database synchronization tool.
Oh, that's cool. Oh, there's Velcro Kitty.
And this is a Klepto Kitty.
Oh,
Also
Klepto.
sometimes known as
Klepto.
yeah, this is the one who
Alright, there we
opens the
go.
drawers and pulls the stuff out. Also the one who got tangled in my headphones before.
So one
There
last
you
thing
go.
on Migrate DB Pro. I mean, one of the, like John was saying, one of the really awesome things is it saves your setups so that you can have a push to live, and you can have a pull from live, and you can have a push to staging and a pull from staging. And, you know, it's just, I love that it saves all of that, and it's a one click and you're done. It's fantastic.
Where did Jonathan go?
I don't know. I think he's coming back. But yeah, no, that's a really amazing part. It does save your settings. That's useful. And again, it has kind of like toggle switches to where it's like, you know, over on this site, you can have it like pulling, you know, this one is like pushing, and, you know, so nothing like accidentally gets destroyed or over it.
And it backs up before it does it too. So it'll back up the database before it even does the pull or the push, and it's great. The other thing I use a lot is the Kint debugger. I just put a link for that there.
Oh, yeah.
I can't live without that plugin when I'm developing, because especially if I'm writing some new code, it is so nice to just put little things in there to show you what the values are in your arrays or things, and it just shows it up right where it needs to be. It's got a nice click where you can click on it. It'll drop down and show you all the contents of whatever it is, variables that you're looking for in there. That's very handy.
So, folks,
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out.
so, folks, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes.
Can hear you. You're a black screen, but
I've gone black, haven't I? So I think we'll go for our second break now, folks. Or no, actually, I think we continue with me blacked out, because it doesn't really matter if you can't see me, really, does it? So I don't know what happened there, folks. We're talking about the live show, and always excitement on the live show. There's always something that goes wrong. So I want to talk about, here's one, I'm going to put the link in, that I tend to put on most clients, is admin columns. Do you know that one?
I've used it a number of times, yes.
Because I like things tidy, and it's like the SEO Yoast, you know, love it, but it has a tendency to take over the whole admin, and especially if you're dealing with.
You can just turn that off under screen options.
Yes, you can. But I'll get on to the next one, Sally. Like when you get on to WooCommerce, when you've got a lot of stuff, these additional plugins, you need something to kind of take control over the admin columns, and this is a free, and it comes with a pro version as well, and it's just a nice little tool that I think. Another one from Delicious Brains, I don't know if you've used it, but I've put it on a couple of my own sites and a couple of client sites, is WP Offload S3. Have any of you used that one?
I've heard of it, but not used
I
it.
haven't used it either.
I haven't used it.
It's a really nice, comes with a nice little interface, and it just helps you with Amazon S3 and getting your images set up. So it's actually loading images off S3 and other media rather than on your your hosting. So especially if you've got a lot of media and you haven't got a massive clan, this can help. I really like it, basically. So it gets a few stars for me, and I've been tending to put it on a lot of sites lately. So, Sally, got any others that you want to talk about?
Sure. I mean, there are things that I put on pretty well every site. Backup Buddy and iThemes Security Pro. Both of them. Now, there are sites that won't let you run Backup Buddy, but on the ones where you can, I tend to use it and back all of my client sites up either to Stash or to S3. Gravity Forms I use on many sites.
Yeah.
And then looking at what else I have here. WP Rocket I install pretty frequently. Because even on hosts that have good caching, it will often do some additional helpful stuff for you.
Have you noticed a lot of improvement using that? I've read a lot of good articles about it lately.
I noticed the most improvement on poorer quality hosting, but I still do notice a difference, and it has been designed so that it will work with hosts like WP Engine that don't want you to use other caching plugins.
Okay.
Anything else, Sally?
Oh well, there's quite a list, but I don't know where we want to go. What else am I looking at here? Heartbeat control.
Oh, I haven't heard of that. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether I think they fixed some of the issues with the heartbeat thing, but I've run into problems where I just forgot to log out of the admin and suddenly WordPress is sucking up a ton of resources just because of the silly heartbeat thing. So that lets you say okay, only run this like in the in the post and page editor instead of anywhere in the admin. And
you got the link for that?
I'm sure I can get you one in just a second.
Right, John, you wanna let Sally find the link for that, because that sounded really interesting. Got any others that come to mind, John?
Yeah, these are all really good. I'm gonna definitely have to embed this blab for later. But
well, because you can't see me.
It's like the Scorpions say, like in 1982, like you really want to black out, so.
I'm so tempted to refresh, but I'm so worried about Blab that I'm just prepared to leave it as it is. All right, go on to the next one. Sorry.
But yeah, I mean, these are all really cool. Definitely, like I said, Advanced Custom Fields Pro. I mean, that is essentially pretty useful.
Can you explain to me?
I love ACF, but I don't actually use it on every single site, so I don't keep it in my deploy install.
Can you quickly explain what it does, John, actually?
Yeah, so WordPress has native support for custom fields, which is just extra metadata, associated with each post. But what Advanced Custom Fields does is it gives you a really solid interface for creating groups of new custom fields that you can associate with posts or specific types of posts. You can set rules to where it's show this on every post or every page, or this specific page template, or just all these different rules. And what that is instead of relying on the hey, you're handing off the site to the client, here you go, Mr. Client, and it gives you more freedom to say here's some values that you can plug into each page, and then you have your page template set up to where it takes those values and plugs them into the page. And this is way more useful than just say using the text editor.
Yeah, it's a superb plugin. I'm just interrupting slightly, John, because I just want to say to the listeners, John, it's more of a kind of advanced developer plugin. I think
Yeah, true that.
It's developed by an Australian guy, isn't it? I've forgotten his name, but
Elliot Condon.
Yes.
yeah, it's a great guy. And it's just a great plugin if you're going into development or as a hobbyist, you really want to, have a really fantastic custom post tool that's got a heap of other functionality, and the price is amazing for what you get, isn't it, John?
Yeah. So basically, it's $25 per site, or you can get a developer's license for $100 a year, and but basically, there's in the pro version, there's like a repeater field where you can, basically say, here's like a group of stuff that we want to repeat. Like, say if you're doing like a set of logos, or you're doing like, hey, here's like some profiles that we want to repeat, like a team member profile, or whatever it is, or just chunks of text and images and buttons and stuff like that. So you can repeat like as many as you want. And the client doesn't have to call you, the developer, like every time they want to make a change. They can.
Right. I mean, I used that on my own site on the in the portfolio, where I have a list of like all the plugins that I've used on the site, and so I just add a new row for each extra plugin, and it has a place for the name and the link, and
Well, have you ever just? I don't want to, because we're going off a little bit of well, not really, but have you ever used Pods either, John?
I have not used Pods. It is it's very similar like that, and it sounds really similar. But I have not used Pods yet.
I've used both occasionally, but I've got the developer for So I'm going to put in here another caching plugin like Rocket. One I use, I think either fantastic, is Comet Cache. Comes with a free version and also a pro version, and they've renamed themselves a few times. I think they got into a bit of a copyright spat, so they had to rename themselves from memory.
it was probably a trademark spat.
Yeah, it was actually. Thank you, Sally. So they had to change, but it's one I've used, but I think either are great. So I don't think you can go wrong if you want to use either. I'm trying to think of... so, John, you want to talk about another one you put on regularly?
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, I mean, one that everybody uses or should use, is Yoast SEO. And, head-to-head, like a lot of people say, like, all-in-one SEO, but I really think it's like no comparison. Yoast SEO is great because you plug in like the keyword or keyword phrase that you're trying to optimize like a page or for, and then it will kind of give you clues. It'll give you like the red, yellow, green, for the page overall, but it will show you like a preview of the snippet, what it's going to look like in Google. It'll tell you like, hey, you need to include that phrase in your title, your body text. None of your images have alt tags. It'll say like, keyword density, stuff like that. But it also does things like it generates like your XML sitemaps, which you can just give the URLs to those to Google. And then every time you publish something new, like Google will go crawl it. You can set like title rules for things like your post pages, archives, custom post types, all those things.
Right. It does open graph meta. It does a lot. I just wish it pestered us less.
True. So what I think we do, folks, we go for our next break, and then we talk about some more WordPress plugins that we tend to use a lot. Be back in a minute, folks. We're coming back, folks. We're going to talk some more about the plugins that we use a lot on our own websites and clients' websites. One that I do tend, I won't say it's controversial, but some people probably get a bit sniffy about it, is I tend to put Black Studio Tiny MCE on a lot of stuff. I just find it really, really useful. What it does is it gives you a little editor for your widget areas. I don't know if you can use it actually on Genesis sites.
You can can do. I've used it before. Very often with Genesis, I'm using something instead like Featured Page Advanced, which, but I've used the Black Studio Tiny MCE widget. And no, Bill, no one can see Jonathan. He's gone into the witness protection program.
About time, really, isn't it, Sally?
Yes. Well, there was that show where I had to call in from the cafe and nobody could see me. It's like definitely the witness protection program version. And there's another widget thing that I've used sometimes.
Oh, that's great, because sometimes I've had some slight problems with this Black.
Right. It's not for exactly the same thing, but it's for managing. I'll have to log into a site that I use it on and remind myself what it's called.
Well,
I don't use it very often, but I've used it a few times when that was the thing that was going to do the trick for the way I needed widgets to be laid out. So
another one I use, folks, is it's a basic social media icon.
Flexible post widget, that's what it's called.
All right, put the link in, Sally, if you can find it. All right. The one I was going to just about talk about was social media widget. I'm going to put the link into the chat.
I remember that one. I almost always use simple social icons or lightweight social icons now.
Yeah,
but
both great as well, aren't they, Sally? But I this is old favourite. What about you, John? Anything that you'd regularly use on the social media side, or anything like icons or widget areas?
Yeah, it just depends. I mean, for like posts and stuff like that, I normally just use like the module from Jetpack, which used to be called like ShareDaddy. But if somebody like needs something different, I just basically go out and just find one of the 80 million.
Right. I've been using the Robin Corbett's scriptless sharing tool for the share buttons. Recently, I've switched to that on a couple of sites because those sharing plugins can be a place that really sucks up resources and hits your performance.
The one I've just put in, Sally, just produces icons, and I found it's been a staple finding, because you can also make your own custom library, and you can make your own different sizes, and it covers.
Right. I mean, the thing about the social media widget and a lot of those is basically they are all using image libraries instead of icon fonts. And you can kind of go back and forth in terms of which is preferable from, accessibility versus clarity versus whatever. But I do find that the icon fonts scale a heck of a lot better.
Yeah, I just like it because I found that it's one of the few that I haven't had a lot of conflict problems over the years. It's a stable, and normally it's compatible with most stuff that I'm working with. But sometimes I think the only thing it doesn't, I'm not sure if it allows you YouTube, but you can go in and customize the plugin anyway and add some fields to other social media. I've gone in, hacked away, and it's I just like it. So. Go on, Jackie. Got any others you like to talk about?
Yeah, I shared a couple of links earlier. One is Better Search Replace, and Delicious Brains is one of the authors on that now.
Oh, right. So, did you put the link in? So,
I did. I put the link in. That one's really helpful if you need to do some database replacements, and it's pretty intuitive, and you can do a dry run to see how many will be affected. It's nice. I like it a lot. It's replaced some other one that I was using a while back, that this one seems to be smoother. The other thing that I really like is Query Monitor. I think most people are using that while you're developing. You certainly don't want to put that on your live site when you're done, but while you're working, it really tells you if you're getting PHP warnings or other things, and it does it in a nice, elegant way, and it's just easier to work with. And then the last one, I was always using the limit login attempts plugin, but I like this server one way better. I had 2 clients recently that were getting constant people trying to log into their site. I was getting emails all the time, saying locked out. And this one has some other features that I really liked. One is you can change the login page. You can rename it to something else instead of WP admin, which is nice because that seems to have put a stop to, at least temporarily, all of the attempts that were going on with those 2 sites. And it has a nice interface where you can really see what's going on, and it had some really nice features that limit login attempts didn't have. So if you've got a host where, they're not real aggressive on monitoring all of that, and you want to make sure that your client is, they're not spending a lot of resources on that server with these constant login attempts, then that's a good plugin. It's free and it's easy to configure and use.
Yeah, they do that. That's part of what comes in the iTheme security is both moving your login page and the various brute force protection and login limits and a bunch of other things. So I have tended to find it convenient just to use one plugin for all of that.
That's a good point.
Another one, a premium one that I tend to put on a lot of people's sites is it comes from Fat Cat Apps. They're well known for their pricing table plugin, but it makes little forms for a list of really well known email services like MailChimp and that. So it's a little kind of form builder that builds quite attractive forms, and I'm going to put the link in a minute. And it's called OptingCat Premium, and I really like it actually. It's got a nice little interface, and it's not ridiculously priced. And I like David. He's been on my show as well. The guy that owns the plugin shop. So if you're looking for something like that, and I use his other plugin for tables a lot. I've used it on a lot of my own sites and on quite a few client sites.
I guess most of my clients don't have pricing tables.
Yeah, well, have a look at it because David's a great guy, and so is his team. And I'm not getting any referral from this, folks. I was teased on WP Water Cooler for that. No, I don't get referrals by saying this, folks. Got any others, John?
No.
I've got one more.
Yeah.
WP Accessibility is a nice plugin if you have if you're considering going through and making sure that you've got some basic accessibility set up on your website. It is really helpful to do, and it's pretty comprehensive on there. So that's definitely one to look for. It's not Genesis specific. You can use it on any WordPress site. I'm going to put a link there. It's a free plugin.
Oh, great. That's really cool. How did you find that one, Jackie? Was it recommended or you just found it?
I think it came, well, it's definitely recommended with Utility Pro.
That's how I discovered it.
It came from Carrie Bills originally. I heard it through her.
Oh, yes. Carrie, one of my other people over in, she the last time I interviewed her was in a bunker somewhere in Texas. Literally. So that kind of brings back a memory. So I'm trying to find some more.
Right. Well, I've got a couple that I use on a lot of sites to deal with images. One of them is the Enable Media Replace plugin.
Tell us more. What does that do, Sally?
Literally, it lets you replace an item in the media library. So, client says, "Oh, I want a new version of this PDF file," and you can just go to where the PDF file is. It helps you avoid a lot of clutter in the media library. Click the button that says replace. Tell it to not just replace the file, but update all the links, and then you only have to make that change there, not anywhere else.
Oh, that sounds great because I was listening. Who I think it was, I can't remember now, but I was listening to another podcast, and I think one of the areas that definitely does need improving is the media library in WordPress, because especially I think they were talking. I think it was it still escapes me, but they were talking about it. They were having to kind of clean up like 6,000 images or move it, and they were having to transfer all the images manually or something, and they were just worrying about the lack of kind of the search facilities and having subfolders and blah,
It is
blah,
pretty
blah.
clunky. There's something I've promised to test from the Max Galleria people about organizing your media library in folders, and I have not had a chance to do that yet.
Jackie or John, have you come across anything that helps with the media library?
As far as
well, search, categorizing, making it more flexible and just general functionality. Come across anything? No, obviously not.
Yeah.
I think we're using something on a project I'm working on right now. I'm going to double check and see if it's what the name of it is.
All right, thanks, Jackie. But I think the other thing, what about search? Because I think Jackie mentioned, and she's put it on in the chat, but have you ever, either you, Sally or John, have you used any additional plugins to improve the basic search function?
I have done in the past. I haven't needed to so much, but it depends what you want. So there are, definitely people speak very well of things like Search WP if you need extended search functions. I've used Facet before for faceted searches, but the last time I did a faceted search, I used something else, which I will just go track down.
Well, the first one you mentioned, a lot of people use that, but I've occasionally had some major problems with theme conflict with that particular one, only occasionally. But it is the one that a lot of people, I forgot the developer's name, unfortunately, but he's got a great reputation, hasn't he, Sally?
Isn't that Ozzy? That's Ozzy Rodriguez, right?
Is it? I'm not sure, actually, John. I don't actually think it is, actually.
Oh, or is it? Let me look it up again.
Yeah,
I think it's somebody. It's him or somebody he knows. I think. Okay, let me take a look.
I might be totally wrong there. I just think it isn't.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I heard him talk about it before, so maybe that's why I'm thinking it's him. But yeah, I think it's not.
No.
Right.
But it's a regular one because, folks, the search in WordPress isn't terrible, but it isn't fantastic either. So if
Ultimate WP query search filter.
Oh, right. That's the one. You've liked that as well, have you?
Well, I used it once. I needed to build because I got fed up with like Team Directory plugins after a couple of them broke on me. But I needed to build a directory that I could filter by various custom fields, and that was what I ended up using for it.
And you've had some good experiences.
It worked. It worked fine. And so.
Rightio then. And we're still waiting for John to come back. Did you ever find out if he was the guy?
Search WP. It looks like it's Jonathan Christopher from the agency like Iron to Iron. So
yeah, I thought.
I get confused.
I do.
I get confused with all the people in the community. I really do.
Yeah. Well, then I think we've had a good chat. So I think we're going to end the podcast part of the show, folks. What we do is we continue our discussion, me and John, when we do some reviews of websites, and also if anybody's got any kind of WordPress problems, we try and help. I think we help, don't we, John? Not too sure, but I think we do.
Yeah, most of the time. Yeah, most of the time.
So I'm just going to ask my guests to say how people can get hold of them, and then we'll wrap this podcast part of the show up. So, Sally, how can people get hold of you?
Sure, I am at Sally Getch on Twitter. And otherwise, you can find me through my website, wpfangirl.com.
Oh, well, that sounds good, Sally. What about you, Jackie? How can people hire you and give you gobs of money?
You can find me on Twitter at jdalia and or on my website at jackiedalia.com.
That's great, Jackie. Thanks. What about my beloved co-host? How can people track you down, John?
Well, they can always find me on my website, lockdowndesign.com, or you can follow me on Twitter, lockdown_. Now tell the fine people how they can get a hold of you, Jonathan.
Well, I'm very easy I'm all over the internet. So look for Jonathan Denwood. Go to the WP Tonic website. We've got gobs of content on that website, just gobs of it. And basically join us on Blab every Saturday, starting at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. We've got a great panel of WordPress experts that don't come on every show. They kind of come on and then they go off and they come back on. So, but we've got a great mixture and it's great fun. And after the recorded, me and John and some of the panel continue and we give free advice and we help you make your website more productive. So see you soon, folks. Bye. Say
Bye.
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 Bye.